Hello YouTube, I am back at the Wet Spot Tropical Fishes warehouse. I am with Cameron and they have a lot of cool species of barbs right now, so we're gonna go and take a look at all of them. All right, so we're gonna start with the J barb here. What can you tell us about these guys?
Oh, I love this fish. So I remember first reading about these guys back in probably the mid-early 2000s in Tropical Fish Hobbyist. Part of the reason that these are sometimes called, I believe, the glowing coal barb is one of the common names. Once they've settled in, and especially in a nice densely planted aquarium or something with a bit more tannic activity, you'll get this incredible red on the males, bits of blackish blue to them as well, tiny bit of white highlights. Stay very small. This barb isn't going to get all that much bigger than about an inch, inch and a quarter. Females still have some nice colors, some nice patterning, even if they don't get quite as big or as flashy. But they do tend to like a bit of cooler waters. This is a fish that, due to its rarity, due to a few of the difficulties of keeping it, since it's not always an eager feeder, like a lot of barbs that we would kind of stereotypically think of. This is one maybe for a bit more of an advanced hobbyist, but I will say that it's extremely rewarding once you get it settled and good to go. It's a beautiful, beautiful barb, one that you do not see very often. The red is stunning. Really nice little African nano fish even, so you could have it in quite a small tank without much worry, just making sure to check everything off the list in terms of what you might need to do to keep these guys well fed and, of course, well colored.
All right, so what do we got here?
So this is going to be Pethia Fetunio, the green dwarf barb. I love this fish. I am a huge barb guy. These guys aren't going to get all that big, pretty stocky, a bit more, you know, kind of what we think of when we think of barbs. Inch and a quarter, inch and a half. Gonna get this really nice golden sheen with some kind of greenish to it. Both sexes are pretty. This is a wonderful fish, very good nano fish. I've had really good luck keeping with these with things kind of as quote unquote wimpy as like celestial pearl danios. I've kept them with white clouds. They have a really awesome temperament. They're really pretty. They're very peaceful. Good color, just a great little fish. And especially I think that greenish kind of coppery color shines through when, again, nice planted tank. Not going to tear up plants. I've had these guys in a variety of setups and I've always enjoyed watching them. They're fast but not too fast. Their movements are energetic but not frenetic. Eat about everything that you throw at them. It's just a really great little barb. I love these guys. And of course they can work with slightly larger barbs too. Maybe not something as big and boisterous as say like tiger barbs can be, but some of the more gentle guys, I did keep these with black ruby barbs once and didn't have any problems.
Parameters wise, are they pretty forgiving on water parameters?
I would say so. I haven't kept these, or excuse me, I didn't keep these when I lived in the Midwest and the water was rock hard. I have kept them here in the Pacific Northwest when I lived in Vancouver. Never had any problems with color, health, anything when they were at more of like a 7.5 pH. These, I believe, are native to India as well and can go a little bit cooler temperature-wise. I did keep these in an unheated tank on a nightstand once with white clouds and didn't have any problems. So I would say very, very adaptable, very, very tolerant, very hardy fish.
Now here's some of my favorite, the African fire barb. What can you tell us about these?
So I love this fish. I have kept them. Gonna get about 1 3/4, 2 inches long. If you're not impressed right this second, you should be. And also the name of the game with barbs, for a lot of them, is gonna be patience. You can start to see on some of these guys the red already bleeding through. Some of the adults I've kept, the red is stunning. It's like glowing embers, incredible fish, got these beautiful stripes. Still a bit more of a slimline body that you'll see a bit more in like the African barbs, which is really unusual. These guys are certainly different from what most people I think would think of in terms of barbs. Tiger barbs, cherry barbs, these guys are gonna be doing a lot of what you see now. You know, they are grouping, their actions are a bit more twitchy, not that that's a bad thing, they're just looking out for predators. More of a benthic barb in my experience, so really cool guys. Can sometimes be a little bit tricky to get onto prepared foods, so don't be afraid, do be prepared. If you take a chance on these guys to possibly offer frozen for a little bit, but I've gotten them onto flaken pellets without any issues. I cannot overstate how beautifully red these guys become as they reach maturity. Awesome fish, a bit more of a challenge to breed, so if you're into that, looking to get some BAP points for your local fish club, this is a really cool, uncommonly seen fish that could check a lot of boxes for you, but just really, really great little barb.
So the gold clown barb, I was really excited to come and see these in person, and I'm not disappointed at all. Are they always this kind of spazzy, or?
They settle out quite a bit. This is actually, we've sold a lot of them from the shipment, and when the tank was a lot more full, they did a lot better and weren't freaking out on the walls. This is a fish where maybe a dither like a Harlequin rasbora would not only be a bit more appropriate from like kind of a Southeast Asian like loose biotope to kind of help make them feel better, but also would look really good since this is another kind of mid-water, more benthic dwelling barb. Beautiful color. These will sometimes come in as contaminants with the gold clown barb. You might even be able to see that in the video, and vice versa. You'll see a few that come in with shipments of these. Another extremely peaceful barb, beautiful gold color with kind of the nice yellow and black little tiger stripe kind of looks. One note is that there's 3 species that do look extremely similar. Typically they'll all come in as Gellius, the gold clown barb, but you will also see Pethia aureus and Pethia caneus that can be pretty darn tricky to tell apart, even for some specialists. I know I've stared at photos of all of them, and it's still kind of tricky to match patterns and everything else to real life, especially when the fish are flitting back and forth, as you can see before us. All wonderful fish, all kind of interchangeable in terms of care, but do be aware that there are a few very similar looking ones in this. This is another fish that I've kept with nano fish, had good luck with, just because, again, despite what you're seeing here with the fast movement back and forth, never had an issue with nipping. Extremely peaceful, very gentle little barb, stunning color. I really like these guys a lot, and I need to keep them again.
All right, so what do we got here?
This is Desmopuntius rhombo-ocellatus. You'll see them called snakeskin barbs. You'll see them called rhombo barbs, which I like because that's fun to say. Rhombos are another one where they're already pretty, but for those willing to take a little bit of time, and in my personal opinion, those willing to even set up more of like a biotope tank where you have a lot of tannic activity, where the waters are a bit tinted, I think you get the best color. A fully mature rhombo barb is going to be maybe 2 inches long, and when they swim, you'll see kind of an iridescent greenish purple on those little saddles, that snakeskin pattern, and then a mature, happy male is going to have bright orange on the body. Yes, tannic activity can help elicit that, as well as make it blend in a bit more naturally with the rest of the tank, but this is another slightly larger, but still extremely peaceful barb. Rhombos are beautiful. Unfortunately, a lot of places do have some difficulties with adjusting these to captive life, since in nature they would come from pretty strictly blackwater areas. We historically have had pretty good luck. They just sometimes need a little bit of time to rest, but it's a beautiful barb, wonderful barb, and one that's fortunately a bit more commonly found. If you have a spot, you know, say in a spare 20 or larger for a group of these guys, nice peaceful fish, I think they're wonderful. I think it's a great fish, and I wish it were a bit more popular.
Yeah, the snakeskin patterning is really nice. All right, so I'm already seeing something I like on these, and that's that green speckling sheen kind of. What do we got here?
So these are going to be a very close relative of the rhombos. These are the 6-banded barbs, Desmopuntius hexazona. What you'll see here is a lot of that same kind of iridescent greenish purple shimmer on the stripes when they're happy, and these are going to be, I think, an even slightly richer reddish orange when happy, much like the rhombos. Great fish, another extremely peaceful barb, one I've kept many times over the years. But what isn't there to say about these guys? They're small, peaceful, really pretty colors. They're going to swim a little bit more in that bottom range of the tank again, not to pigeonhole, but I think a lot of folks, their first and sometimes last introduction to barbs is tiger barbs, flitting around in the upper reaches of a tank, being aggressive. So these are always a good alternative, and these are one of those ones where if somebody hates barbs, this is where I would kind of try to turn them. I will also note that these are hexazonas. This is one where they're often imported, you'll see, as pentazona, the 5-banded barb, which will typically have a little indicative black spot right behind the dorsal fin, and they will typically have that even at small sizes. Most of what we see in the hobby right now, or at the very least on the West Coast, is going to be the 6-banded barbs. I'm not sure where those 5-bandeds went, but all of our batches that have been coming in as of late have been the 6-banded. If there's anything wrong with that, just a beautiful fish, and I'm wondering where that other guy went.
Now, I do want to touch on this Dennison barb here because it's going to be in the video. And assure you, this is like a lifelong inhabitant, right? Like this is just one you guys are going to keep around forever.
Yeah.
Not one you're going to. So don't worry if you're looking at Dennison barbs. That's not one you're going to get.
Yep, roseline sharks, Dennison barbs, whatever you want to call them. A lot of those times, because they are very popular, we get them in large numbers. Some of them are going to have some mild deformities, given that they're tank raised, like that fella. I'm going to guess he's probably been here since he was about 1.5 inches long. We like to keep them around. They're beautiful fish. You know, unfortunately, there's some animals that do have a little bit of something that makes them a little unique. We like those animals.
Yep.
Sometimes if we have some of them kicking around, online sales will offer them for sale. But these guys deserve to have a happy, healthy life. And additionally, from a utility standpoint, they're great dithers too. You can see all these smaller barbs are following those guys around. So they're not only cool to look at, cool to have around, but they do help serve fishy purpose as well. They're really helpful for making some of these smaller cyprinids feel at home in our tanks as well.
Speaking of good alternatives for tiger barbs, I think this is a great one, the black ruby barb.
I first fell in love with barbs when I had a 124-foot tank, and initially it had a large group of black ruby barbs, about 25. And then in my teenage wisdom, I decided, you know what, let's switch that over to tiger barbs, and got about 36 of those guys. It was awesome, but black ruby barbs are definitely a bit more sedate, maybe not smaller. I mean, a large male is going to get about that same size depending on what source your tiger barbs come from. No less beautiful, still have the nice striping, but certainly a bit more peaceful. Even when these guys are kept in groups a little smaller than I'd personally like, 4 to 5 specimens, you don't tend to run into as many problems. They can certainly nip something really slow moving, but as long as you have a reasonably sized group, in my opinion, 6 to 8 or more, and as long as you give them adequate tank mates in space, this is a beautiful fish. This is the absolute quote-unquote worst you'll see them at as juveniles. Females will stick with a lot of this kind of tannish orange body, white belly, black stripes on them, that's nice, and then males will flirt with being either red and black or this incredible jet black with like a bright red face. Easy to spawn. It's a fish that's been in the hobby for many years. It's hardy, it's awesome, it's beautiful. There's not a lot of downsides here unless you're a really huge fan of, say, giant-tailed fancy guppies.
All right, so tell us about these gold barbs.
It's the goldfish, but not really. It's a reasonably sized goldfish. These are tank-raised gold barbs. These are what you will sometimes still see referred to as barbodes or Barbus schuberti. This was a strain that, if memory serves, was developed in the 1960s from the wild form of these that are going to be mostly gold. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of red and green to them. Sometimes you'll see some speckling to them. Another pretty peaceful barb. These are going to be similar in a lot of ways to the black ruby, where they might mess with something particularly slow-moving or particularly peaceful, but otherwise they're going to fit in well with, your average community tetras, phantoms, stuff like that. Very pretty fish, extraordinarily durable. These guys can take pretty much any parameter you can throw at them. Been bred in captivity for a long time, so just nice, easy, peaceful, hardy, very commonly available, typically very reasonably priced. It's a good fish, to put it bluntly, and especially if you like comic goldfish and don't have a huge tank or huge filtration to throw at them, this I think is a very worthy alternative. Beautiful fish. I really like gold barbs a lot, and truthfully, I've never actually kept this outside of working in a fish store, so one that I still need to check off the bucket list, although I have kept a very similar one, I guess, if you could say that.
So I got kind of a funny story. So I have an outdoor tub with goldfish that I was using to feed my mata turtle, and I was like, you know what, I want some gold barbs out there too, so I put them out there. They were doing just fine. It started getting cold, so I scooped them all out and brought them inside. Well, turns out I missed one, and the tub had frozen over, and I was looking at it, and I saw him swimming under the ice, and I was like, oh my God, he's like living in freezing water. Like, I wouldn't recommend that, but just to show you how durable they are, I broke the ice and scooped them out. It took forever, but yeah, just a really cool fish. So I've always thought these to be really kind of unique. What can you tell us about the spanner T-barb?
I love the T-bob.
T-bob?
Yeah, we call a lot of them bobs. This is just a bit more personable, I think. Spanners are for those that like maybe bigger fish, bigger cichlids, big hill stream tanks like myself. I wouldn't say that they're aggressive, but they're certainly pushy, and they will get large. On the Wet Spot storefront, we do have in one of our display tanks a very old, very big spanner barb, and he's a genuine probably 6 inches. It is a very hotly contested office debate as to how much color one of these will develop as an adult male. There's some awfully pretty photos with some nice yellows and blues to them. It just takes a while, and they certainly get what I think is interesting as they age and get a little bit more round, kind of like that goldfish face where they've got like a bulldog jaw kind of pointing upward that I think is really cool. Another fantastically hardy fish, very eager feeder. These are going to be a good companion, a good analog to certain things like Mascara barbs, where you could throw them in with, yes, like angelfish, fairly reasonably tempered cichlids. I mean, something big that couldn't eat them, like, I don't know, I'm not going to say a juvenile arowana out of pocket, but it could probably work, as long as sizes were appropriate for a little bit. I really like these guys. I've never actually gotten around to keeping them personally myself, and maybe we'll have to see about these. What do we got here? 8 little fellows, but very pretty, very interesting fish, and one that I remember growing up was a lot more commonly seen, and now it's a bit more of a rarity, at least in our neck of the woods, it feels like, which is a shame. It's a really, really cool fish.
All right, so I see 2 barbs in this tank. What do we got going on here?
We got a twofer. So we have these guys with the bands are wild gold barbs, something that you pretty much do not see. Now, for those familiar, for those that have kept them and grown gold barbs out to maturity, these are going to look pretty similar to, of course, the same species that they actually are. You'll see that nice banding on them that's developed. You see this really nice gold sheen. And when you take these guys and put them in either like a well-structured tank, somewhere that doesn't have a bare bottom, maybe a little bit more brightly lit, we are a warehouse after all, they develop this really nice gold and green to them. And I've even seen a lot of hints of red. I have some of these guys at home, and when the males are really feeling it, they kind of look like little salmon in many ways. It's beautiful. Same rules still apply, still just a nice stout barb that's very peaceful, short of shoving smaller things out of the way, maybe nipping something really wimpy. Great little fish, and I'm frankly thrilled. I had never seen wild gold barbs, and that is not a thing that shows up in the aquarium hobby. And of course, the other fish that you can tell from the tone of my voice I'm maybe mildly less excited about because it's way prettier, are the Mascara barbs. These are Dawkinsia apsara, formerly Assimilis. They were redescribed in, I believe, 2020. So pretty recent on those guys. You can see the beautiful mascara marks under the eyes. You can see the nice red, white, and black in the tails. And of course, this is still them as juveniles. When they're adults, you'll have purple, you'll have red, you'll have green. You'll have, in males, a nice filament on some of the fins. Nice, big, swimming, 6-inch long fish when mature. That would be a huge one. You don't always see them that big. Typically a bit spendier due to the beauty, due to the fact they are a bit harder to find, but a wonderful barb. I mean, it's one of those, like, hotel lobby, like, display fish in my book, where it's like, yep, people know what it is for the most part. It's big, it's beautiful, it is incredible, it is a sight to see. And of course, they're doing really well with their much smaller cousins in here. I'm a huge proponent of mixing barbs whenever possible within reason. I have a couple tanks at home that are kind of my barb tanks where it's like, oh, those guys will work together, boom, in they go. And it's always just a lot of fun to watch. Just all that swimming without it being too crazy. The colors flashing, flaring, clashing. It's just awesome to look at. It's arguably the tank that I stare at the most down in my fish room.
So this is now the second gold barb that we've seen. These obviously being wild caught versus the other, which are just really gold. Mm-hmm. What's the story there? Like, we have 2 fish with the same name.
So pretty much what happened is much like I got swordtails on the brain, I guess. They were just our newsletter fish. The wild form long ago in all of my fun old aquarium hobby books was something a bit more easy to access. And it was taken in and developed into a strain that became more popular. Gold barbs are going to be found, I believe, from Vietnam to China, so areas not commonly exported at and haven't been for quite a while, a couple decades if memory serves. I'm only in my 30s. And that gold form became just so much more popular that there was, from a financial reason, no reason for folks to really bring these guys out if they're going to be typically a bit more expensive, a bit hard to find, versus, you know, farms breeding gold barbs hand over fist. Kind of like our swordtail colors that we see in a lot of those, or platies or guppies, are far removed from the wild versions that still exist, but they became more popular. You know, I've never, to my knowledge, seen a wild-caught swordtail, but I've seen plenty of fancy ones.
So basically, the previous gold ones that were really gold are man-made,
yes,
whereas these are obviously wild-caught, as we discussed. Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so here's one I've never seen before, the Indigo barb. What's the story here?
This fish is incredible. What a lead-in. So these guys are going to come from India. You can see a nice little panda barb right there intermingled with them. These guys are behaviorally very similar to black ruby barbs, I feel like. I've certainly tried keeping them with slightly pushier big barbs, and they didn't seem to like that as much, so I separated them out. What you'll see here is a pale facsimile of what they'll do. I have a big group of these guys at home. You'll see that gold flashing around the spot near the tail. You'll see a nice orange sheen to the fins. You're gonna see flashes of purple. It's a stunning barb. It's incredible in large groups. I really need to sit down and breed a whole bunch more. But unfortunately, you don't see these guys very often because they're not always quite as appetizing, like we mentioned before, as some of these guys as they will be as adults. We can see some of these guys in the corners are starting to really get there, but they're going to look fantastic. Fairly small growing barb, gonna reach about 1.5 inches, maybe 1.75 inches, but just a wonderful fish. This is another mistaken identity fish. These are always exported as Pethia narayani, which is extremely rare. These are Pethia setni. Most of what you see in the hobby is Pethia setni. The way to distinguish is they have serrations on their dorsal fin. But of course, for a lot of folks, that doesn't matter. The fact that this fish is really cool and really pretty is, and I would have no issue keeping even these with something like zebra danios. They just really don't have a lot of bite to back up their bark that you'll see sometimes out of them.
All right, the clown barb. Tell us about these.
Oh, this is another big lunker.
Yeah, they are active.
Yeah. This, much like the T-barbs, which they would do excellently with, is going to be another fairly large barb. 5 inches is certainly not out of the question for an adult. They are going to be very pretty. You can already see, I'm seeing just in these flashes as they freak out with that addition of that new light. The orange coming through, you'll get really nice purplish green on the stripes. I do promise that once they're settled in and not startled by a bunch of humans filming them, they're a little bit more laid back, but just an active swimming barb that's going to spend a lot of time in the bottom and midwater. Stop me if you've heard that one before. But with really nice color, and this is another extremely hardy one. If memory serves, these come from China. You've probably heard us mention several times that something can tolerate cold. A lot of barbs that we see in the hobby out of China and India, depending on exactly where they originate, can frequently tolerate a lot of cold. I know when we had those ice storms here in Portland, what was that, 2 weeks ago, a couple weeks back, time's blurring together. I unfortunately lost power a couple times, and the fish that just were chugging along without a care in the world were a lot of my barbs, just because I keep a lot of barbs that are wild caught from those areas. They were certainly used to things dipping down well into the 60s without much issue. But this is a really nice fish, one that you don't see commonly anywhere, but these are extra special in that these are wild caught. Most of the time when we have them offered, they're tank raised, so I'm a little extra jazzed about that. I always like me a good wild caught fish.
Yeah, you can see the flash of the colors as they go by. Very pretty. All right, so we got more mascara barbs, but I'm interested in this other barb that's in here. What is this one?
So those are Dawkinsia rubra-tincta, the red-tinged barb. I'm more partial to the common name Rosy hued barb, and also their one clone, Rasbora friend. That is my favorite Dawkinsia. I think that is the prettiest one. No offense, mascaras, cover your little fishy ears. When they're mature, you'll get a really nice kind of greenish patch to the back and this magnificent pink, like flamingo pink throughout the body, some nice white highlights. I just love them. I've got a big group at home. It's a fantastic fish. It's one that you realistically never see. We're one of the few vendors that I've ever seen carry it, tank raised or wild caught. I just love them. I know that there's certainly not as much to look at right now as these large mascaras that we see rounding into form. I think that this is one of the best cases of a mildly attractive duckling turning into a beautiful swan. I love this fish. I think it's the best one. That's my personal opinion. I just think the color is so unique when they're mature. I just love those guys. A little smaller than some of the other ones. They'll max out probably about 4 inches. They're going to be a little bit more similar in many ways, I think, to like the Aruleus or Trade Aruleus barbs in terms of some of the look and function, but still just an awesome fish.
Yeah, these are really nice. Here's the Filament barb. Looks somewhat similar to a mascara, in my opinion.
I would definitely agree. This fish, for a lot of folks that don't have the opportunity to get mascara barbs, or sometimes will have a little bit of sticker shock at the higher price that mascaras will often command, this is always a great alternative. They're typically a little bit more available, a little more reasonably priced. Still a very, very pretty fish. Get a lot of the same colors that you'll see on a mascara barb, but with, of course, without the eye stripe. They're not going to quite have the same shimmer to them, but a very pretty fish. Nice reds, nice golds. nice greens to them, and of course the dorsal filament on males is always really nice. I actually did keep these guys with tiger barbs in a 4-foot 120 once upon a time. They did awesome. Filaments are pretty sturdy. A lot of these barbs can be occasionally a little bit prone to shock due to the hill stream environments that they come from if you do a huge water change, but these guys I didn't run into that as much. I've always really liked the filaments. They're kind of the unsung heroes of Dawkinsia because there's so much more available. They're not always as outrageously priced, but it's still a very pretty fish in its own right. Would still be a great dither for a lot of larger fish. Of course, very active without it being, now that they've settled, too frenetic. Really, really nice little fish.
All right, so a more common species here, the Odessa barb. What can you tell us about these?
Oh, the Odessas are fantastic. I just wish that we would see some of their close cousins that look similar, because I'm selfish. Odessas are a favorite for a reason. Males are, of course, going to have beautiful yellows with kind of nice little black speckles in the fins. Males are going to have beautiful red to them. They're not huge. I've even had tanks where Odessas coexist with tiger barbs, but I've also had tanks where they get picked on by them. So I know these also sometimes have a bit of a reputation for being a bit feisty, but I don't think that's normally the case. Another kind of black ruby barb junction in terms of aggressiveness, but they are obscenely popular since they burst onto the scene fairly recently for a reason. They're pretty, they may nibble very soft leaf plants but leave most things alone. They look incredible in a school, males and females look different. It's hard to go wrong with an Odessa barb. There is a reason that they're so popular. What I tend to like to note, because I do get a lot of questions about it and or a lot of compliments that we get on them, a lot of the time our Odessa barbs are wild caught, not all the time, but certainly some of the time, and I bring that up as a humble brag just to point out that a lot of folks are disappointed with Odessas that they see. There's many, many countries of origins that these guys can come from, and of course I'm not going to pigeonhole and say one countries are better than others, but there's a lot of vendors out there. I certainly think that some are not as high of quality as the other, and it certainly shows in the fish. I've seen some kind of dim-looking Odessa barbs, so just be careful. Make sure to vet sources. Try to get parents' photos if you can, if you're opting for tank raised, but otherwise, wild caught, it's hard to beat because you're not going to get something all that ugly that was forged by nature, I think.
All right, the last one. What do we got here?
Well, this is a very interesting one. So this is a fish that I don't think we've ever had before. Brand spanking new. This is going to be Enteromius CF leonensis. CF just because we're not quite positive. This is an African barb, and when I think of African barbs, I know we touched on a few of the most common, most popular ones. I think of these guys because there's an awful lot of barbs in Africa. A lot of them are going to be more of this cigar-shaped. They're going to have really nice yellows and reds to them. Often you'll see the black stripes, but they're different. African barbs that I've kept and that I've dealt with on a professional level are very different. And that's why I wanted to kind of take a look at these guys, is that these will probably get around 3 to 4 inches long at most. African barbs seem to oftentimes of more of this body shape squabble with each other a bit more in groups. They're totally fine with other fish, never had problems with them interacting with anybody else. But should you take the chance on these guys, and I certainly recommend it because I think they're very interesting, the look is cool, the color's cool, the behavior's cool, the rarity's cool, make sure to give them lots of space and make sure to give them other fish to swim along amongst with, just because I think these guys are really awesome. This is a fish that I don't really know what it does. I can guess as to what it does, but I think they're really pretty. I think they're going to be yet more beautiful, and that's just, the variety is the spice of life here. It's just a really pretty fish, really neat fish that I don't know what mysteries it holds, and I'm really excited to figure some of that out.
All right, I don't know how many species of barbs that was, but there was a lot of cool species there. Thank you so much for showing them to us and giving us all this knowledge. If you liked any that you saw, you can use code Steenfott10 on the website for 10% off all fish. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.